What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to I Think. First and foremost, I want to shout out all the new subscribers. Recently, I've been making new videos, and my new videos have been getting a lot of attention. So I want to appreciate everyone who's new to the channel. I also want to appreciate everyone who's shown love and support in the comments section. As y'all know, everyone who follows me knows I really appreciate all the commenters because y'all motivate me to continue making new videos. So shout out all the people who leave comments in the comments section. It's a lot of motivation. It definitely inspires me to keep this thing going. Now, my last video was on my perspective concerning the 2019 year of return, the invitation offered by President of Ghana, the President of Ghana. Sorry, people keep texting me. The new offer offered by President of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo. He's offered all the African Americans and all the Africans in the diaspora a place of safe haven to come, move back to the continent, and reestablish roots. Y'all can check out that video. I'm not going to go over the content of that video, but y'all can go check that out if you feel so moved. Now, in that video, I received a lot of comments, I received a lot of backlash, and I received a lot of negativity, some positive and some negative. And like I said, all comments are appreciated because y'all motivate me to keep this thing going, and y'all inspire me to make new videos. This video is not so much in response to that, but inspired by that. This video is going to be on why is there such a division between the Africans and the African Americans. Now, before I give you what I think, I'm just going to try to put this into a parable. Just a short story, if I can. Sorry, people keep texting me. But check this out. Imagine, if you would, you're living in a neighborhood. You got a neighborhood, houses are built up. You have a nice house you're living in, you and your family. You've got, let's say mom, dad, 3 kids living in the house. Okay? And across the street is just a dirt plot of land. Nothing's there. Now, a new family comes into the neighborhood and they buy that dirt plot of land. And the house that you're living in, the house that is already built up, that house, that family, the mother, the father, decide to sell 1 or 2 of those children to this new family that's just moved into the neighborhood. Now, the kids have been sold to this new family, and they now have to go across the street and live in a dirt plot of land which is not built up. So the kids go across the street, they're living in this dirt plot of land, and they're going to start building it up. They're going to work hard. They build it into a teepee. First they get a little hut, and then they build it up into a little condo. They build up a little condo, and then they build up into a mansion, and they build up a mansion. So originally you were living in one house, your parents sold you to a different family. Now you're living across the street, and that house, there was no house. It was just a dirt piece of land. But you as a child worked hard and you built that plot of land into a big mansion, which is even better than the house which you were originally living in. Now, let's say the mom, the dad, and the one child who remains in the original house comes across the street. They see you across the street. They don't say hi. They don't speak to you. They don't ask how you're doing while you're building up that plot of land, while you're living in the little hut, while you're living in the little teepee. They don't say anything to you. But once you eventually build that dirt plot of land into a mansion, once it becomes a mansion, then they start to say hi. Then they want to come visit your house. Then they want to come hang out and say, oh, we're the same. We come from the same family. Imagine how you would feel if you were sold to that other family, and that other family who had nothing, just a dirt plot of land, you had to build that up. And once you built it up, that's when your original family decides to come back around and they decide to say hi. After years of no silence, after years of no contact, after years of no support, once you build your dirt plot of land into a mansion, that's when your old family wants to come back and say hi and see how you're doing. This is a bit of a parable, but let's just bring that back into real life. You have to understand the perspective and the mentality of the African Americans. Now, I'm not speaking for all African Americans, but I'm just trying to simplify the divide between the Africans and the African Americans. For hundreds of years, these Africans sold the African Americans into slavery. And for hundreds of years, they didn't say hi, they didn't send a boat, they didn't send a canoe, they didn't start a war to defend to get you back out of slavery. They sold you into slavery, and they wrote you off like a bad check. They didn't start any wars about it. They didn't send a boat. They didn't ask how you were doing. They didn't care. Fast forward a few hundred years, the United States, the land that was once nothing, was once just a dirt plot of land, has now been built up into a mansion, one of the greatest countries on earth, if not the greatest country on earth. And now all of a sudden, you have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Africans going into America and trying to reap the benefits that America has to offer. And the Africans that go to America, do they go there with an empathetic or sympathetic heart? Many of them don't, unfortunately. Many of the Africans who go to America, they look down on the African Americans. They disrespect the African Americans. And they don't appreciate the sacrifices that the African Americans had to make in order to build up America to a place that Africans would want to go in the first place. This is what causes the divide. I'm trying to simplify the issue, but just to make it a little bit more human, so that if you're an African, I know I have plenty of African friends. I've been to Africa. I have African friends in America. I understand we're brothers. I think we need more unity. But I think that there's a bit of coldness coming from the African side. And I feel as though I've had this personally asked of me. Why is it that Africans and African Americans don't get along? So this is what I'm trying to explain to any African who cares, any African who wants to understand the mentality of the African Americans. Just put yourself in our shoes for a bit. Imagine your people were sold into slavery to a country which there was nothing in. It's just a dirt plot of land. And you build it up. And once you build it up, the Africans, the people who sold you into slavery in the first place, decide to come over to the country that you built and disrespect you in the country that you built and say, we're all the same. Why don't you treat us with respect? This isn't the way to go. Africans, if you want to bridge this divide between the Africans and the African Americans, if you want to understand the mentality and the distrust African Americans have for the Africans, just put yourself in our shoes for a bit. Understand that just like the African Americans don't trust the white man, the quote unquote white man, just like there's a divide between the white man and the African Americans because of the wrongs that the white man has done to the African Americans, naturally there's going to be a divide between the Africans who sold the African Americans into slavery in the first place. Another thing while we're on the topic, a lot of times people say, yeah, we need unity, yeah, let's leave the past in the past, and that's all well and good, but you can never tell a person's true feelings until you get them upset. Perfect example. A lot of white people say, oh, let's leave the slavery stuff in the past. That was my ancestors. That wasn't me. I don't feel that way. But then when you get them upset, they start calling you the N-word and they start disrespecting you, saying, oh, you're just a nigger, or you're just, you're an N-word, you're a nigger bitch, and you're all this N-word, and they start dropping the N-word. They show the disrespect there. Same with the Africans. Africans will say, "Oh, brother, we're all the same. We're family. We're all African. We're all family." But then when you get Africans upset, that's when you start seeing their true intentions. That's when you start seeing what they really think about you. That's when they start saying, "Oh, you have that slave mind. You have that slave mentality." And really, when I hear that, I take it with a grain of salt, because although, of course, only we can free our minds, at the same time, African Americans don't have a slave mentality. African Americans have a survival's mentality. African Americans are the greatest survivors of all time. We've survived trauma that most nations would never even imagine. Most nations could never even think of surviving. We've survived great the great Atlantic trade, slave trade. We survived getting on boats, shipping across packed like sardines to a new continent where you have never been, where you don't speak the language. We survived losing our language. You survived losing our religion. We survived losing everything. And now we built up a country which is arguably the greatest on earth. African Americans have a lot to be proud of. And Africans, just because you're proud of Africa, which you should be, don't underestimate the pride that African Americans have in what they've built. And don't think that for example, let me stop there. A lot of Africans, they'll say they want us back. You know, Ghana just recently extended their the year of return. But then in the comments section, when you get the Africans upset, they'll say, "Oh, we don't want you here anyway. We don't need you here anyway." But don't get it twisted. African Americans have bread. That's what y'all really want. Y'all really want the money. African Americans, if we were a nation of our own, we'd be the top 10 richest countries on earth. Alone. African Americans alone. Forgetting the white Americans and all the other nations in America. If African Americans were a nation by themselves, we'd be a top 10 richest nation on earth. Facts. So don't get it twisted. African Americans have a lot of money. I'm making this trip from outside of America because I've digressed. I'm going to keep it humble. But we have access. We have passports. We're able to travel. We're not as dumb as you might think. We're able to think for ourselves, and we're able to determine what's in our best interest. And returning to Africa, that is the goal. African Americans will return to Africa en masse. I'm talking about millions of African Americans will return to Africa. But we're not going to do it on the terms that Africans may like. We're going to do it on our terms. We're going to do it from a position of strength. And don't think we're just going to trust blindly the people who sold us into slavery. We're not going to trust y'all blindly. No, we're going to get into a position of strength. We're going to develop our own private militaries, and we're going to make Africa pop off just like we made America pop off. Anywhere African Americans go, that's going to be the greatest country on earth. Yeah, I said it, and that's what I think. Peace.